Okay, let's dig into this. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are wading into a really specific and frankly fascinating corner of Australian employment relations.
Hmm.
We're looking at what happens when a resignation isn't really a resignation. The question we're asking is, in the eyes of the law, when you walk away from your job, did you really quit?
Or were you forced out?
Exactly. We've got a critical stack of sources here detailing the services and case strategies of specialized employee representatives, specifically the Australian Workplace Discrimination Representatives, or AWDR.
And crucially, we have two recent case outcomes from the Fair Work Commission, the FWC, that are just incredibly illustrative. They define exactly where that line is.
The line between an emotional resignation and an unlawful firing.
That's right. Our mission for you today is to really get your head around the powerful and sometimes, surprising protections available to employees under Australian law.
The Fair Work Act, equal opportunity laws.
Exactly. We're going to focus on that critical gray area,
Mm.
the difference between voluntarily resigning and this really complex concept of being constructively dismissed.
And here's the thing to keep in your mind through this whole deep dive, the key takeaway, really. This material shows that the FWC will look past an employee's extremely difficult or even, irrational behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If they decide the employer's conduct left that worker with no real choice but to quit.
That distinction is everything in these cases. It's the difference between getting nothing and getting a significant payout.
So let's start at the beginning. If
Mm.
you're an employee facing a workplace issue, you need specialized help. So who are these organizations like AWDR?
Well, what's fascinating is their identity.
Uh-huh.
They're very clear about it.
Yeah.
AWDR describes themselves as Australia's leading non-lawyer workplace and discrimination representatives,
So not a law firm.
not a law firm. They call themselves specialist workplace relations and discrimination firms. And they're not new to this. They've been around for over 30 years, supported over 16,000 clients. That longevity and volume tells you they're highly, highly specialized in this one particular environment.
That distinction, a workplace relations specialist versus a traditional lawyer, that feels really key. Why does that matter so much?
It matters for, I'd say, a couple of reasons, but mainly accessibility and speed. These firms, they focus purely on the jurisdiction of the FWC.
So mediation, negotiation.
Conciliation, exactly. They're specialists in the administrative process of the Fair Work Act. They often avoid the long, expensive court battles a traditional law firm might get into.
Which is how they can offer that no-win, no-fee model.
Precisely. For unfair dismissal and sexual harassment claims, that's their offer. It makes seeking justice affordable. It takes away that huge financial risk for the employee.
And looking at their services, it goes well beyond just the basics. I mean, they're not just handling standard unfair dismissal claims.
No, not at all.
Their sources list these complex matters like non-genuine redundancy, adverse action, and what they call general protection disputes. Now, for someone listening who might not know the jargon, what does general protection actually mean?
General protection is, it's probably one of the most important protections a worker has. In essence, it stops an employer from taking adverse action against you.
Adverse action being anything negative, like getting fired, demoted.
Exactly. Changing your job for the worse, for exercising a workplace right. And a workplace right can be anything from complaining about safety, asking about your pay, or making a complaint about bullying.
So if you complain about, say, unsafe mold in the office, and then suddenly you're being performance managed really aggressively, that could be a general protection dispute.
That is a textbook example, and that connects directly to the larger social justice agenda they talk about.
Hmm.
Their goal is explicitly about holding employers accountable and getting justice and closure for the worker.
Okay, that gives us the context. Now let's see how that specialization pays off. Because this first case study is where it gets really interesting. It feels like something out of a TV drama. We're looking at Luke Wilson versus Services Australia. Mr. Wilson walked away with over $33,000, even though the FWC admitted his own conduct was challenging.
This case is a masterclass in complexity. It forces the commission to look past the surface words and ask, was this resignation truly voluntary?
Or did the employer's actions or lack of action force his hand?
Exactly. When the employer creates an intolerable situation, that's constructive dismissal.
So let's track the timeline here, because it's like a ticking clock of escalating distress. He started out strong, right?
Okay.
A high-performing senior project officer earning a performance allowance.
Yeah, he was doing very well. But his decline started after he raised complaints about a mold-infested office, which he believed was making him sick. Then came complaints about workplace bullying.
And the situation just spiraled. It went from a workplace issue to a full-blown medical crisis.
A huge crisis. By early February 2025, his doctor diagnoses him with an adjustment disorder, with anxiety and depressive symptoms, and certifies him with zero capacity for work.
Zero capacity. That's a very clear medical assessment.
It is. But the employer's behavior just escalated the problem. Despite having that certificate, Services Australia kept engaging him with work.
So instead of giving him space to recover, they kept pulling him back in.
They kept pulling him back into the very dynamics that were making him ill, and his communication, as a result, it became excessive.
I saw the numbers on that. It was astonishing.
It was. One supervisor reported 36 phone calls and 24 texts over just 6 weeks. And these were long calls, up to an hour, where he's just venting his frustrations. It signals a massive mental health crisis.
Not willful insubordination.
Not at all.
Yeah.
And it reached a terrifying peak. He told his case manager something like, "If I kill myself, it is on you guys."
Wow, that just grounds the whole thing in how much pressure he was under.
It does. And after that, he gets another certificate saying his recovery could take months. The end came when he finally resigned by email, listing 10 grievances. The mold, the bullying, being forced to meet while unfit.
But the agency's response was another major failure.
A huge one. They contacted his doctor to check if he was sound of mind to resign, citing heat-of-the-moment guidelines. Mr. Wilson objected immediately and filed his claim.
Okay, hold on. If the FWC acknowledges his emails were long and rambling and his behavior was irrational, why didn't Services Australia just win the case by saying he was guilty of willful misconduct?
That is the critical question. The FWC acknowledged all of that. They said he was a difficult employee, but they looked past his behavior and applied a specific legal test.
And what was that test?
The FWC asked, was Mr. Wilson in such a state of emotional stress or mental confusion that he could not reasonably be understood to be intending to resign?
And they found that he was.
He was. And here's the aha moment. The FWC found that Services Australia treated his ostensible resignation, his surface-level quitting, as a final termination, and, crucially, failed to follow up properly given his medical state.
So by not giving him a chance to reconsider, they effectively initiated the dismissal themselves.
That's it. The sacking was deemed to be at the initiative of Services Australia because their actions had made the environment intolerable.
Wow. So his difficult behavior was treated as a symptom of the illness, and illness the workplace itself made worse. That sets a huge standard for managers.
A profound standard. The commission ruled the agency's conduct had the probable result that Mr. Wilson had no choice but to resign for his own health. Unfair, constructive dismissal. Hence the $33,000 payout.
Okay, that case shows the employer's conduct forcing the quit. Let's shift gears slightly. Let's look at another case where the argument wasn't about a toxic environment, but whether the employee actually quit at all.
Right.
This is the case of Alex Yates versus Stephanie Muirridge involving the operator of intentional care.
And this case shifts our focus from the employer's conduct to the employee's intent. Mr. Yates was the director of operations. The conflict was all about pay dispute over a promised pay rise and a partnership arrangement.
And it all seems to hinge on a single short text message.
It does. During the heat of this conflict, he sends a text saying he would be making a report to Fair Work and contacting a lawyer today.
Okay, that's pretty confrontational.
And then he adds the line, "There's a reason staff talked to me, not you."
Ouch! And the employer, Mrs. Ridge, she seized on that. She claimed he'd voluntarily resigned, that he'd even said, "I quit," on the phone.
Right. She argued the text in the alleged phone call was his termination. But Mr. Yates denied quitting entirely. He said the text was just meant to drive the point home that she needed him.
That he was valuable and they needed to sort this out.
Exactly. He argued there was no way he would walk away, given how much he'd invested in building the business. And then, crucially, he put it in writing. When she asked for written confirmation, he replied, "I have not resigned."
That seems pretty clear.
It is. This is a huge lesson for everyone. The FWC will not let an angry text message become a binding resignation if your actions immediately contradict it.
So what did the commission decide about that text?
They sided completely with Mr. Yates. They found his actions did not support resignation. They ruled the text message was ambiguous at best, and that, given his commitment, he would not have simply walked away.
So they ruled the termination was initiated by the employer when she just decided his text meant he quit.
She acted on it, and in doing so, she initiated the termination. And once the FWC decides that, the next step is to check for procedural fairness and a valid reason.
And she had no valid reason.
None. The FWC rejected her claims of serious misconduct. They found she had clearly approved the pay changes she was now complaining about.
And the procedural fairness part.
She failed completely.
Yeah.
She didn't notify him of a valid reason for termination, didn't give him a chance to respond. That failure alone is often enough. He was awarded nearly $10,000 plus superannuation.
So, what does this all mean for you, whether you're an employer or an employee feeling pushed to the brink? These cases, handled by these specialist representatives, they show how deep the FWC goes to find the true nature of a termination.
They look beyond the surface words, they look at the context, the intent, the whole picture.
In the Wilson case, they were protecting an employee whose mental state was compromised by the workplace. In the Yates case, they were protecting an employee from having an ambiguous text used against him.
And in both, the core principle is procedural fairness.
And a quick practical reminder from our sources, Australian Fair Work claims have very strict time limits.
Very strict. The specialists repeatedly stress that getting guidance quickly is absolutely essential. Sometimes you only have days.
And this raises a really important final question for you to think about, building on that Wilson case. The ultimate challenge here is this. If a worker's irrational behavior, the excessive calls, the aggressive texts, is found to be a symptom of a workplace-induced illness, does the employer then have an increased duty of care? And at what point does that duty override their right to manage challenging conduct?
It forces them to differentiate behavior caused by illness from willful misconduct. That line is where the true legal complexity and the massive payouts lie.
Powerful thoughts to chew on. That is all the time we have for this deep dive.